My name is Walter Briggs. I am 68 years old, and if there is one thing I have learned in my life, it is this. The people who smile the widest at your dinner table are sometimes the ones sharpening a knife underneath it. 3 weeks ago, on Thanksgiving night, my daughter's husband stood up in my dining room, grabbed a ceramic plate off the table, and hurled it at the wall 6 inches from my head. Turkey and gravy splattered across the portrait of my late wife, Helen. My daughter just sat there. She didn't flinch. She didn't scream. She looked at me with her mother's eyes and said, "You brought this on yourself, Dad." I wiped a piece of sweet potato off my sleeve, looked at both of them, and said, "Well, I suppose dinner is over." Then I walked to my truck, drove to the sheriff's office, and filed a report. What they didn't know is that I had spent the last 4 months waiting for exactly that moment. And what they will never understand is that I gave them every chance in the world to walk away clean. They chose this. Before I tell you how it all started, let me know in the comments where you're watching from today. And if you believe that loyalty should never be taken for granted, hit that subscribe button. It means more than you know. I need to take you back to July. That's when I first noticed the pattern. I'm not the kind of man who misses things. I spent 35 years as a fraud examiner for the federal government, specializing in real estate schemes across the western states. I've sat across the table from men who stole pension funds from widows. I've dismantled Ponzi operations that bankrupted entire towns. I know what theft looks like before the thief even knows he's stealing. So when my son-in-law, Derek Payne, started calling me twice a week out of nowhere, I paid attention. Derek married my daughter Carolyn 4 years ago. Before Derek, Carolyn was sharp. She had her mother's kindness and my stubbornness, a combination that served her well. She was a 4th-grade teacher in Billings. She drove a sensible car. She called me every Sunday without fail. Then she met Derek at a financial planning seminar. He was charming, well-dressed, and full of confidence. He told her he managed portfolios for high-net-worth clients across 3 states. What he actually managed was a string of failed ventures and a growing pile of debt he kept rolling over like a boulder down a hill. I saw it immediately. Carolyn didn't. They got married fast. Within 6 months, the Sunday calls became every other week, then once a month, then only when she needed something. Derek had slowly, methodically, isolated my daughter from me. Not with violence, not with cruelty, just with constant, subtle redirection. Your dad's so old-fashioned, babe. He doesn't understand modern finance. Why do you need to call him every week? You're not a little girl anymore. Classic manipulation. I've seen it in 100 case files. But when it's your own daughter, knowing the playbook doesn't make it hurt any less. By July, I knew something was seriously wrong. My old colleague at the bureau, Frank Medina, owed me a favor from a case we worked in 2014. I called him and asked him to run a quiet background check on Derek Payne. What Frank found made my stomach turn. Derek was drowning. He owed $170,000 across 6 maxed-out credit lines. His so-called investment firm had been flagged by the State Securities Board for suspicious client transfers. And 3 months earlier, he had taken out a second mortgage on the house he shared with Carolyn, the house I had helped them with the down payment on, without telling her. But that wasn't the worst part. The worst part was the search history Frank pulled from a public court database. Derek had been consulting with an attorney named Vivian Cross, a woman whose specialty was elder conservatorship cases. She helped families gain legal control over aging relatives' finances. In plain English, Derek was building a case to have me declared mentally unfit so he could take control of my assets. Now, I need you to understand something about my assets. I live on a 400-acre cattle ranch in the Bitterroot Valley of Montana. Helen and I bought the first 80 acres in 1986 with every penny we had saved. We built the house with our own hands, literally. I poured the foundation. She chose every cabinet, every tile. Over 40 years, we expanded it piece by piece. The land alone is worth several $1,000,000 today, but I'd burn it to the ground before I'd let someone take it from me. On top of the ranch, I have a federal pension, a brokerage account Helen and I built over decades, and a life insurance payout from when Helen passed 3 years ago. I'm not a rich man by Wall Street standards, but out here in Montana, I am a man with something worth stealing. The moment I saw Vivian Cross's name in Derek's records, I called my attorney, not some local guy who handles cattle disputes. I called Raymond Holt, a former federal prosecutor who now runs a private practice in Missoula, specializing in asset protection and elder law. Raymond and I had worked together on a case 15 years ago, and I trust him with my life. Raymond answered on the second ring. Walt, I was wondering when you'd call. That's the thing about Raymond. He never wastes time on small talk. I laid out everything Frank had found. The debt, the securities investigation, the conservatorship attorney, the second mortgage Carolyn didn't know about. When I finished, the line was quiet for a long time. Walt, he finally said, we need to move fast. If Cross files a conservatorship petition before you're prepared, you'll be playing defense in a system that is heavily tilted against seniors, even sharp ones like you. The burden of proof to get out of a conservatorship is much harder than the burden to get put into one. I know how it works, Raymond. That's why I'm calling you before they file, not after. What do you want to do? I want to give them enough rope to hang themselves. I want them to make their move, on my terms, in my house, where I control every variable. And I want it documented so thoroughly that no judge in Montana would ever question my competence or my character. Raymond let out a slow breath. You're going to bait them. I'm going to invite them for Thanksgiving. Over the next 4 months, I prepared. Quietly, methodically, the way I used to prepare for a federal raid. First, I called Raymond's tech specialist, a young man named Ari who handled digital forensics for the firm. Ari came out to the ranch on a Wednesday, driving an unmarked van. In 6 hours, he installed 4 high-definition cameras, one in the dining room, one in the living room, one covering the front porch, and one in the hallway outside my office. He also wired 3 microphones, one embedded in the overhead light fixture in the dining room, one in a decorative wooden box on the mantel, and one in a pen I would carry in my shirt pocket. Everything streamed to an encrypted cloud server that Raymond monitored in real time from his office. I tested the system every week. Crystal clear audio, perfect video, every angle covered. Second, I restructured my finances. I had already set up the Helen Briggs Irrevocable Trust 2 years ago, right after Helen passed. It was her idea, actually. She had seen too many families torn apart by inheritance fights at her church, and she made me promise to protect the ranch. Don't let anyone sell this land, Walt, she told me in the hospital, her hand thin and trembling in mine. Not even Carolyn, especially not whoever Carolyn marries. Helen always could read people better than I could. The trust held the ranch, the brokerage account, and the insurance payout. Raymond was the executor. The trust was airtight, structured so that even if I were declared incompetent, no one could touch it without Raymond's authorization. Derek and Carolyn didn't know it existed. As far as they knew, everything was in my name, sitting there like an unlocked vault. Third, and this was the hardest part, I did something I swore I would never do. I helped Derek without him knowing. His biggest and most immediate problem wasn't the securities investigation. It was a private lender in Reno, a man named Salazar, who had fronted Derek $85,000 for a real estate flip that never materialized. Salazar was not a patient man. Frank told me Derek had received threats, not legal threats, the other kind. So I had Raymond wire $85,000 to Salazar's account anonymously. Derek's debt to the most dangerous man in his life was erased overnight. I didn't do this out of love for Derek. I did it for Carolyn, and I did it as a test. If Derek woke up one morning and discovered that his worst nightmare had vanished, what would he do? Would he pause? Would he feel the weight of that miracle and reconsider the path he was on? Would he come to me, humbled, and ask for help to rebuild his life honestly? Or would he see it as a sign that the universe was on his side and push harder? He pushed harder. Within 2 weeks of the Salazar debt disappearing, Derek called me. His voice was bright, confident, almost giddy. Walt? Hey, how are you? Listen, Carolyn and I were talking, and we thought it would be wonderful to come out to the ranch for Thanksgiving. We haven't seen you in so long. We miss you. I almost laughed. They hadn't visited in 14 months. The last time they came, Derek spent the entire weekend on his phone, and Carolyn barely said 10 words to me. Now suddenly they missed me. That sounds wonderful, son, I said, keeping my voice warm and a little slow. I'd love that. Helen always made such a big deal out of Thanksgiving. I've been trying to keep the tradition going, but it's hard cooking for one. "Oh, Dad, that breaks my heart," Carolyn said. She was on speaker. I could hear the rehearsal in her voice, the slight pause before each sentence, as if she were reading from a script Derek had written. "We just want to make sure you're okay out there all alone." "Well, there's one more thing," Derek said, his casual tone just a shade too practiced. "My brother Travis is going through a rough patch. Lost his apartment in Boise. Would you mind if he tagged along? He just needs a place to crash for a few days. The ranch is so big you'd barely notice him. Travis Payne." I knew about Travis. DUI conviction in 2021. Possession charge in 2023. Pled down to a misdemeanor. Currently unemployed with no fixed address. This wasn't a brother needing a place to crash for the holiday. This was them planting a person inside my house. A foot in the door. A warm body who would be very hard to remove once established. "Of course," I said. "The more the merrier." Helen would have wanted a full table. I hung up, walked to my office, and sat down in front of the monitors. Every camera was green. Every microphone was live. I opened the desk drawer and looked at the photograph of Helen on our wedding day, standing outside the little chapel in Whitefish, laughing because the wind had blown her veil into my face. "They're coming, Helen," I said quietly, "and I'm ready." Thanksgiving morning, I was up at 4. I started the turkey at 5, the way Helen taught me, brined overnight and slow roasted with rosemary from her garden. I set the table with her good china, the set she inherited from her grandmother. I put fresh flowers in the center, wildflowers I had dried from the field behind the barn, the field where Helen used to walk every evening until she couldn't anymore. At 3 o'clock, I checked the systems one last time. All cameras recording. All microphones live. I slipped the pen recorder into my shirt pocket and buttoned my flannel over it. At 4:15, a rented SUV pulled into the long gravel driveway. I watched them through the living room window. Derek was driving. Carolyn was in the passenger seat. And in the back, a man I recognized from photographs but had never met. Travis Payne. He was thinner than his pictures, with hollow cheeks and restless eyes that scanned the property the moment he stepped out. Not the way a guest looks at a beautiful ranch. The way an appraiser looks at a listing. I opened the front door with a wide smile. "Happy Thanksgiving! Come in, come in! You must be Travis." Travis shook my hand loosely, already looking past me into the house. "Nice spread you got here, sir. How many acres is this?" 400, I said. Helen and I started with 80. 400, he repeated. And I saw him glance at Derek. A look that lasted half a second. But I caught it. It was the look of a man confirming a number he'd already been told. Dinner started well enough. I played the part I needed to play. Not senile, not confused. I refused to insult my own dignity that way. Instead, I played tired, quiet, a little forgetful about where I put my reading glasses, a little slow to follow the conversation. The kind of man who might, to a careless observer, seem like he was losing his edge. But I never once pretended to be something I wasn't. I was simply quieter than usual. And in my experience, people fill silence with their true intentions. Derek filled the silence beautifully. "Walt, this turkey is incredible. You really do this all yourself?" "Every year," I said. "Helen taught me. Though I confess I had to check her recipe card 3 times this morning. A harmless admission. But I saw Derek log it. 3 times. Repetitive behavior. A data point for his file. After the main course, while I was bringing out the pie, Derek made his first move. It wasn't subtle. He wasn't capable of subtle. "Walt, sit down for a second. Carolyn and I have been talking about something." I set the pie on the table and eased into my chair. "Oh? It's about the ranch," Carolyn said. Her voice was small. She wasn't looking at me. She was looking at her hands, folded in her lap. My heart cracked. She knew what was coming. She hated it. But she was going to do it anyway because Derek had told her to. That's what manipulation does. It doesn't remove your conscience. It just teaches you to ignore it. "Dad, you're out here alone on 400 acres. The winters are brutal. You're 68 years old. What if something happens? What if you fall? What if there's a fire?" "I've managed fine for 3 years, sweetheart," I said gently. "The ranch hands come 3 times a week. I have the neighbors. Neighbors are 20 minutes away. Derek cut in. His voice had shifted. The warm, deferential tone was gone. This was the real Derek. Efficient. Impatient. Walt, I'm going to be direct with you. We think it's time to talk about the future of this property. This ranch is a massive asset, and it's sitting here with one person on it. That's not sustainable. What exactly are you proposing? I asked. We move in, Derek said. All of us. Travis needs a place. Carolyn and I can work remotely. We take over the operations, the livestock management, the books. You can relax. Enjoy your retirement. You've earned it. There it was. Take over the books. The same phrase, the same play, every single time. I've heard it from embezzlers in boardrooms and con artists in trailer parks. Give me access to your money, and I'll make your life easier. And if I say no? I asked, keeping my voice even. The table went quiet. Travis stopped chewing. Carolyn closed her eyes. Derek's jaw tightened. Walt, he said slowly, I don't think you understand the situation. Carolyn is your only family. We are your safety net. Without us, you're a 68-year-old man alone on a remote ranch in Montana. If something happened to you out here, nobody would find you for days. Maybe weeks. That's not a threat. That's a fact. It was absolutely a threat. And the microphone in the light fixture above us captured every word of it in pristine digital clarity. I appreciate your concern, I said, but this is my home. Helen and I built it together. I'm not ready to hand it over. Carolyn looked up. Dad, please, just think about it. We're trying to help. I know you believe that, sweetheart, I said. And I meant it. I believed she believed it. That's what made this so painful. She wasn't evil. She was trapped. Trapped by a man who had spent 4 years slowly reshaping her reality until his voice was louder than her own. But Derek was not trapped. Derek was the trap. He leaned back in his chair, and I watched his face transform. The mask of the concerned son-in-law peeled away, and underneath it was something cold and mechanical. Walt, I didn't want to bring this up at Thanksgiving, but we've already spoken with a professional, a specialist in elder care transitions. She's reviewed your situation, and frankly, she has concerns. Vivian Cross. He was telling me, to my face, at my own table, that he had already started the conservatorship process. Concerns about what? I asked. About your capacity to manage all of this alone. The ranch, the finances, your health. She thinks a formal evaluation might be in order, just to make sure everything's okay. For your protection. For my protection. The most dangerous phrase in the English language when it comes from someone who wants your money. I set my fork down. I looked at Derek. I looked at my daughter, who couldn't meet my eyes. I looked at Travis, who was watching me the way a vulture watches a limping animal on the highway. No, I said. The word was simple. No drama, no trembling. Just a clear, firm refusal from a man who has been saying no to predators for 35 years. Derek blinked. Excuse me? No, you're not moving in. Travis is not staying. And no one is evaluating my capacity. I am in full possession of my faculties, and this conversation is over. For 3 seconds, no one moved. Then Derek's face went red. Not the red of embarrassment, the red of a man who has been denied something he already considered his. You're making a mistake, Walt. I've made very few mistakes in my life, Derek. Letting you sit at this table might be one of them. That's when Travis spoke for the first time. His voice was thin, reedy, aggressive. Hey, old man, my brother's trying to help you. You should be grateful anyone gives a damn about you at all. Travis, I said calmly, I know about your DUI. I know about your possession charge, and I know you haven't held a job in 18 months. So I'd appreciate it if you didn't lecture me on gratitude in my own home. Travis's face twisted. He stood up so fast his chair screeched against the hardwood floor. He grabbed the plate in front of him, the plate loaded with what was left of his Thanksgiving dinner, and he threw it. Not at me directly, at the wall beside me. Close enough that I felt the rush of air. The plate exploded against the wood paneling, and chunks of turkey and gravy sprayed across Helen's portrait that hung above the sideboard. The dining room went silent. A piece of sweet potato slid slowly down Helen's face in the painting. I looked at it, I looked at the brown gravy dripping onto the frame she had picked out herself at a little shop in Kalispell. Then I looked at Carolyn, my daughter, my only child, the girl I carried on my shoulders through the county fair, the girl who cried on my chest when her mother died. She was sitting perfectly still. Her face was blank. She did not gasp. She did not rush to clean the mess. She did not turn to Travis with outrage. She looked at me, and what she said next will stay with me until the day I die. You brought this on yourself, Dad. 5 words. 5 words that told me everything I needed to know. She was gone. The Carolyn one raised. The Carolyn Helen and I loved. She was somewhere underneath this stranger, buried under 4 years of Derek's poison. But she was not coming out tonight. Maybe not ever. I stood up slowly. I picked up my napkin, walked to the wall, and gently wiped the gravy off Helen's portrait. I took my time. I made sure every spot was clean. They watched me in silence. When I was done, I folded the napkin, set it on the table, and turned to face them. Dinner is over, I said. I'd like you all to leave. Dad, Carolyn started. Now, Carolyn. I walked past them, took my keys from the hook by the door, and stepped outside into the November cold. Montana, in late November, is a different kind of quiet. The air is so cold and so still that you can hear your own heartbeat. I got into my truck, started the engine, and drove the 32 miles to the Ravalli County Sheriff's Office. I didn't speed. I drove exactly the limit the entire way. I thought about Helen. I thought about the ranch. I thought about the sweet potato on her portrait. And somewhere around mile 20, I let myself feel it. The grief. Not for the plate. Not for the wall. For my daughter. For the girl she used to be. I gave myself 12 miles of grief. Then I shut it down. I had work to do. At the sheriff's office, I asked for Deputy Lena Coulter. I knew Lena. She had worked a cattle theft case on my neighbor's property 2 years ago, and I had helped her trace the paperwork. She was sharp, thorough, and she didn't condescend to seniors. That mattered. Mr. Briggs, she said, looking at the gravy stain on my sleeve and the careful expression on my face. What happened? I sat down across from her desk and told her everything that had happened at dinner. Every word. I told her about the plate, about Travis, about Derek's implied threats, about Carolyn's silence. I told her I did not wish to press charges at this time. Lena looked at me the way a good investigator looks at someone, not with pity, but with attention. Mr. Briggs, are you sure? That's assault. You have every right to press charges tonight. I'm sure, Lena. I want this on record. I want the report filed. But I'm not ready to press charges yet. There's more to this, and I need a little time to handle it properly. She studied me. You're not scared, are you? No, ma'am. I'm not. All right, I'll file the report. But Walt, if anything else happens, you call me directly, not 911, me. She wrote her cell number on the back of her card and handed it to me. I drove back to the ranch. Their SUV was gone. The house was dark. I walked inside and went straight to the dining room. The gravy on the wall was drying in a dark streak. Helen's portrait was clean because I had wiped it, but the wall behind it was a mess. I left it. I didn't clean it. I photographed it from 4 angles with a timestamp on my phone. Then I locked the front door, armed the security system, sat down in my office, and called Raymond. It's done, I said. Travis threw a plate. It's on camera. Carolyn told me I brought it on myself. Derek threatened me with a conservatorship to my face. All recorded? Every second. Good. Now we wait. Now we wait. I didn't have to wait long. The next morning at 7, my phone rang. It was Derek. His voice was calm, controlled, solicitous, the voice of a man who had spent the night coaching himself. Walt, I want to apologize about last night. Travis was completely out of line. He's dealing with some personal issues, and the stress just got to him. Carolyn and I feel terrible. I appreciate that, Derek. Listen, we talked it over, and we think the best thing for everyone is if we come out this weekend. Just Carolyn and me, no Travis. We'll help you clean up, fix the wall, and just spend some quality time together. Maybe we can talk about the future in a calmer setting. They weren't coming to apologize. They were coming to regroup, to reassess the target, to figure out how scared the old man really was. "That sounds nice," I said. "Come Saturday." I hung up and immediately called Frank Medina. "Frank, I need you to dig deeper into Derek Payne's finances. Everything from the last 6 months. Every wire transfer, every account, every email you can legally access. And I need the status of the Securities Board investigation." Frank called back the next afternoon. What he told me recalibrated the entire operation. The Securities Board wasn't just investigating Derek. They had referred his case to the FBI. Derek had been moving client funds into personal accounts, not large amounts individually, but over 2 years, it added up to over $300,000. He was looking at federal wire fraud charges. He didn't know the referral had happened yet, but it was coming. Soon. "How soon?" I asked. "Weeks. Maybe a month. The indictment is being drafted." That changed everything. Derek wasn't just greedy. He was about to be indicted. He needed my ranch not as a luxury but as a lifeline. He was planning to liquidate it, hide the proceeds, and use the money to fund his defense or disappear entirely. And he was going to use my daughter and a phony conservatorship to do it. Saturday came. Derek and Carolyn arrived at noon. No Travis this time. Derek was on his best behavior, charming, attentive, helping me carry firewood, complimenting the ranch, asking about the cattle. Carolyn was quieter. She lingered in the kitchen, running her fingers along the countertop Helen had picked out. I watched her open the cabinet where Helen kept her tea collection, rows of little tins labeled in Helen's neat handwriting. Carolyn picked one up, held it to her nose, and closed her eyes. For a moment, just a moment, I saw my daughter, the real one. Then Derek called her from the living room, and the moment was gone. That evening after dinner, Derek made his second move. He had clearly rehearsed it. He sat across from me in the living room, leaned forward, and put his elbows on his knees. The posture of a man about to deliver bad news with fake compassion. "Walt, I've been thinking a lot about what happened Thursday, and honestly, it made me realize how vulnerable you are out here. No, listen." He held up his hand as I started to speak. "I'm not trying to upset you. I'm stating facts. You're alone, you're aging, the ranch is enormous, and the financial side, the taxes, the livestock accounts, the property insurance, it's a lot for one person." "I manage fine, Derek." "Do you?" "Because Carolyn told me you forgot to pay the property tax last quarter. She said you mentioned it on the phone." I had mentioned it. It was true. I had forgotten, and then I caught it 2 days later and paid it with a small penalty. It happens. But Derek had logged it. Another data point for Vivian Cross. "I caught it," I said. "It was 2 days late. This time. But what about next time? What about the time after that?" He paused for effect. "Walt, I'm going to be honest with you. Carolyn and I have been in touch with a specialist, someone who helps families navigate these transitions." "Vivian Cross," I said. The blood drained from his face. For 3 full seconds, Derek Payne could not speak. His mouth opened and closed like a fish pulled from the river. "How do you know that name?" he whispered. "Because I spent 35 years investigating people like you, Derek." I let my voice drop to its natural register, no longer the tired rancher, just me. "I know about Vivian Cross. I know about the conservatorship petition she's preparing. I know about your $170,000 debt. I know about the second mortgage you took out on Carolyn's house without telling her. And I know about the FBI investigation into your client accounts." Derek stood up. His chair scraped backward. Carolyn appeared in the doorway, her face white. "Dad, what are you talking about?" "Ask your husband, Carolyn. Ask him about the $300,000 he stole from his clients. Ask him about the federal wire fraud charges that are coming. Ask him why he really wants to move onto this ranch. It's not because he loves me. It's because he needs to liquidate my property to fund his legal defense before the indictment drops." Derek was breathing hard. His hands were clenched at his sides. "You don't know what you're talking about. You're confused. You're paranoid. This is exactly what I was afraid of." He turned to Carolyn. Do you see? Do you see what I've been telling you? He's losing it. He's making up conspiracy theories. He needs help." Carolyn looked at me, then at Derek, then back at me. I watched the war on her face, the part of her that was still my daughter fighting against the part that Derek had built. Carolyn, I said quietly, I also know something else. 6 weeks ago, someone anonymously paid off Derek's $85,000 debt to a private lender in Reno, a very dangerous lender. That debt vanished overnight. Derek, do you know who paid it? Derek froze. What? How do you... That's not... I don't. I paid it, I said. I paid $85,000 to save your life, Derek, because a man named Salazar was going to break your legs, or worse, and you were going to drag my daughter into that nightmare. The silence was absolute. I could hear the wood popping in the fireplace. I gave you a clean slate with the most dangerous man in your life, I continued, and then I waited. I waited to see what you would do. Would you come to me and confess? Would you try to change? Would you use that second chance to become a better man? I looked at him. You didn't. You used it as a green light to come after my ranch. Derek's face went through 5 emotions in 3 seconds. Shock, fear, rage, calculation, and finally, something I hadn't expected. Resignation. He knew. In that instant, he understood that he had been outmaneuvered by a man he had dismissed as a relic. But then the calculation won. I watched it happen in his eyes. The brief flash of surrender hardened back into the cold, mechanical look I had seen at Thanksgiving dinner. He wasn't done. A cornered animal never is. It doesn't matter, he said, his voice low and dangerous. It doesn't matter what you know. Carolyn is your heir. This ranch, this land, when you die, it comes to her. And through her, it comes to me. You can play your little games, old man, but time is on my side. You're 68. I'm 42. I can wait. I stood up. I walked to the old roll-top desk in the corner of the living room, the desk Helen bought at an estate sale in Helena 30 years ago. I unlocked the bottom drawer with a small brass key and pulled out a leather portfolio. You're right about one thing, Derek. Carolyn is my daughter, and I love her more than anything left in this world. I opened the portfolio, but this ranch has not legally belonged to me for 2 years. Carolyn stepped into the room. What? Your mother made me promise, Carolyn. On her deathbed, she said, don't let anyone sell this land, not even Carolyn, especially not whoever Carolyn marries. She knew, sweetheart. She couldn't have known about Derek specifically, but she knew the danger. I held up the document. This property, and every financial asset I own, belongs to the Helen Briggs Irrevocable Trust. The executor is my attorney, Raymond Holt. The trust cannot be broken, amended, or accessed by any family member, including me, without Raymond's authorization. Even if I were declared incompetent tomorrow, you would get nothing. Vivian Cross can file every petition she wants. It won't matter. The assets aren't mine to give. Then who gets it? Derek shouted. When you die, who gets it? I looked at my daughter. This was the part that hurt. When I die, I said, the ranch will be placed in a conservation easement with the Montana Land Reliance. It will never be developed. It will never be sold. The cattle operation will continue under a local family trust I've established with my neighbor, Jim Yellowtail, who will employ local ranchers. The remaining financial assets will be donated to the National Center on Elder Abuse. Derek went white, then red, then something beyond color. He looked at Carolyn, expecting her to explode, to attack me, to do something. But Carolyn was staring at the document in my hands. I watched her read the words. I watched her lips move, and I watched as something broke open behind her eyes. Not rage, not grief, but recognition. She recognized her mother's voice in those words. She heard Helen reaching out from beyond, protecting the land she loved, protecting her husband from the very scenario that was playing out in this room. Mom made you do this, Carolyn whispered. Your mother asked me to protect what we built. Yes. Carolyn sat down on the couch. She put her face in her hands. She didn't cry. She just sat there, very still, processing the wreckage of her life. Derek was not still. Derek was vibrating. This is insane. This is fraud. You can't just disinherit your own daughter. We'll contest it. We'll sue. We'll have you declared incompetent and the trust overturned. You can certainly try, said a voice from the front door. Raymond Holt stepped inside, removing his hat. Behind him stood Deputy Lena Coulter and a man in a dark suit I didn't recognize. "Raymond," I said. "Thank you for coming. Wouldn't miss it." He turned to Derek. "Mr. Payne, I'm Raymond Holt, trustee and executor of the Helen Briggs Irrevocable Trust. I'm also here to inform you that as of this morning, the trust has filed a formal complaint with the Ravalli County Sheriff's Office regarding your activities. Additionally, I believe this gentleman has something for you." The man in the dark suit stepped forward. He opened a leather badge case. "Derek Payne? I'm Special Agent Marcus Webb, FBI. You're under arrest for wire fraud and securities violations. Please turn around and place your hands behind your back." Derek's legs gave out. He sat down hard on the arm of the sofa, his face gray. No, this isn't. You can't. Derek Payne, you have the right to remain an attorney." As Webb read the Miranda warning, I watched Carolyn. She hadn't moved. She was still sitting on the couch with her face in her hands. I wanted to go to her. I wanted to put my arm around her and tell her it would be okay. The way I did when she was 7 and the dog died. The way I did when she was 16 and the boy she liked took someone else to prom. But I couldn't. Not yet. Because I didn't know if she would let me. Deputy Coulter stepped forward. "Mr. Briggs, do you wish to press charges regarding the assault on Thanksgiving?" I looked at Derek, handcuffed now, being guided toward the door. I looked at Carolyn. I looked at Helen's portrait on the wall, still clean because I had wiped the gravy off with my own hands. "Yes," I said, "I do. Against Travis Payne for assault. The video evidence is on my attorney's server." I paused. "Not against my daughter. My daughter is not the enemy here. She's a casualty." They took Derek out. The FBI vehicle was already in the driveway. Lena stayed behind to take my formal statement. Raymond sat with me at the kitchen table while I walked through everything one more time. From July to tonight. Every step documented. Every piece of evidence cataloged. When Lena left, Raymond poured us both a whiskey from the bottle Helen and I had been saving, a 20-year Macallan she bought for our anniversary the year before she got sick. "To Helen," Raymond said. "To Helen." We drank in silence. Then Raymond looked at me. "What about Carolyn? That's not up to me anymore. I did everything I could. I protected her from Salazar. I protected her from Derek's fraud. I protected the ranch her mother built. But I can't protect her from her own choices. She has to find her way back on her own." Raymond left at midnight. The house was quiet. I sat in Helen's chair by the fireplace, the chair she always sat in while she read her mystery novels, and I let the silence settle over me like snowfall. That was 3 weeks ago. Derek is in federal custody awaiting trial. Travis was arrested 2 days later in Boise on the assault charge, plus an outstanding warrant I didn't even know about. The conservatorship petition Vivian Cross had been preparing was withdrawn the moment she learned about the FBI investigation. She wanted nothing to do with any of it. And Carolyn. Last Tuesday, I found an envelope in my mailbox. No return address. Inside was a single sheet of paper, in my daughter's handwriting. Just 2 lines. "I'm sorry, Dad. I need some time." I put the letter in Helen's desk, in the drawer next to the brass key. I don't know if she'll come home. I hope she does. But hope is not a plan, and I stopped making plans for other people's choices a long time ago. What I do know is this. The ranch is safe. Helen's legacy is protected. The land she loved will never be sold, never be developed, never be carved up by someone else's greed. I spend most mornings in her garden now. The lavender she planted along the fence line is dormant for the winter, but in spring it will come back. It always comes back. That's the thing about roots. If they're deep enough, nothing can kill them. I sit on the bench she built from reclaimed barn wood, and I drink my coffee, and I watch the sun come up over the Bitterroot Mountains. The air smells like pine and cold earth and something else, something I can only describe as permanence. This land was here before me. It will be here after me. And no one, not my son-in-law, not his brother, not any attorney or con artist or desperate fool, will ever take it from the woman who made it home. If there is one lesson I have learned from all of this, it is simple. Protecting the people you love sometimes means standing alone. It means making decisions that hurt. It means accepting that you cannot save someone who doesn't want to be saved, and that the hardest act of love is setting a boundary and holding it even when your heart is breaking. Don't ever let anyone, especially family, mistake your patience for weakness. And don't wait for someone else to protect what's yours. By then, it's already gone. What would you have done in my place? I'd genuinely like to know. Leave me your thoughts in the comments below. And if this story spoke to you, please hit that like button and subscribe to Stormborn Vengeance for more stories like this one. Take care of yourselves and take care of each other.